It's the end of the day with Ray. Hello, my friends. Well, ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to jump on that gigantic, sharp, interactive board to go through Ricoh's first half of FY 2024, which ends in March of 2025. I got to say right off the bat, more bad news regarding operating profit. First half of 2024, less than 1%. Terrible, terrible, terrible. You know, Ricoh, if you were in school, you'd get sent to the dean's office. If it was in the 60s or 70s, when you got to the dean's office, you'd be getting a spanking because this is really, really bad. And Ricoh, I don't understand. I don't understand why the leadership at Ricoh can't do whatever it has to do to increase their operating profit. They just can't make tough decisions. Their leaders are just hanging around, hoping everything works out till they retire. What in the hell is going on at Ricoh? This is getting to a point of absurdity. You know, I'm putting together the presentation and someone sent me an email and they said, hey, Ray, did you see where Ricoh won a bunch of awards at a charity event? And I said, okay, well, it was a charity event. I mean, folks, I get it. We want to do things for charity as an industry, and it's fun to get together, slap each other on the back, pass around a bunch of trophies, but we can't believe in the merits of these things unless there are merits in these things. And let's be honest, you know, there's another OEM that used to win a whole lot of trophies, and that OEM's Konica Minolta. I remember the president of Konica Minolta USA won a trophy for Executive of the Year like, 10, 11 years in a row. As a matter of fact, when he finally left Konica Minolta, I did an episode and I said, all the other OEM leaders are excited because now they'll have a chance to win Executive of the Year because the Konica Minolta CEO left. And folks, at the end of the day, none of those awards have based in reality or merit. Are they? Konica Minolta ran around and bought up all kinds of assets trying to build an IT services company. We look at their financials and we say, woo, that probably didn't work out. Our friends at Ricoh bought Mindshift, had a big impairment charge against that a few years ago. Now they're running through Europe, buying up more stuff. It's just absurdity at too many levels. And both Konica Minolta and Ricoh, at the end of the day, are examples of two really bad run organizations when you compare them to their peers. So I'm going through this presentation that Ricoh puts together, and they're going to talk about things. And one of the things they talk about, they say revenues rose but earnings declined. I put in red, maybe chasing revenue at all costs is the problem. They're also telling the whole world, hey, we got to lower our forecasts on operating profit. You know, our initial forecast was to have a 2.8% operating profit. We got to change it to 2%. Holy folks, this is insanity. When I went through their first quarter numbers, I was giving them a hard time about the 2.8% forecasted operating profit. I was saying, what's going on over there? You all the leaders get in the boardroom and you all come up with this 2.8% number. No one stands up and screams and throws all the leaders out, says go back to your departments and figure out where to cut costs, figure out where to drive revenue that's profitable, and don't come back in here until we can tell the world we're going to have a 4.5% or 5% operating profit. That didn't happen. Instead, they get through the second quarter, they get together again. Okay, 2.8, that was way too ambitious. After all, this is Ricoh. I'm sure somebody probably said that in the boardroom. We got to change it to 2%. Folks, when you say it like that, does it sound sarcastic? Hell yeah. Does it sound crazy? Hell yeah. But there's something going on that's pretty damn crazy, because when you compare Ricoh to their peers, they just can't perform. Let's look at this a little bit. The initial forecast for revenue was $16.4 billion for FY 2024. They changed the revenue forecast, jacked it up a little bit to $16.7 billion. Operating profit, the original forecast was $458.5 million, or 2.8%, which is already in the toilet to begin with. No home run about 2.8%. And here we are, we're changing it to $340.6 million, 2%. Maybe chasing revenue at all costs is the problem. Let's look where they're at so far for the first half in revenue. First half of the year for revenue, they're at $7.9 billion. They have an operating profit of $44.5 million, 0.6%, just a little bit over a half of 1%. Folks, I couldn't even color the whole thing in green. It's so disgusting. Seriously. 44.5 million. 0.6%. They want to get to 340.6 million in operating profit. They need 296.1 million the rest of the year. They need 8.8 billion in revenue the rest of the year to hit their 16.7 billion in revenue. They're not going to get there. Well, they might get the revenue because they love chasing revenue. They don't really care if they make any money when they catch it. So they'll probably get the revenue number, but I don't think they're going to get the 2% operating profit. I think you're going to come in at 1%, 1.2%, but I don't see them getting 2%. And so, ladies and gentlemen, what I wanted to do, hang on a second here. I wanted to look and see what they did in the second quarter. And the reason I wanted to rifle in on the second quarter, because if you looked at the first quarter, they were sitting at 43.4 million in operating profit. And it only went up to 44.5 million. And I'm like, what the hell? So they added 4 billion in sales for the second quarter. And the operating profit through the second quarter for the first 6 months is 44.5 million. That means they added 1.1 million in operating profit on $4 billion worth of revenue. That's 0.03%. 0.03%. So you got the line here, and it's you can't even see it because it's not sticking up far enough. I've showed you this slide before. You know, Ricoh's just, the only thing they're consistent at is not ever getting over 3 or 4% operating profit. They're pretty consistent at that. They had 3.7 in the year 2022. They had 3.9 in the year 2019. In 2023, they had 2.6. They were forecasting 2.8 for this year. They just lowered it to 2 points. I think they're coming in at a point or a point and a half at the most. I wanted to look at the digital products. We all know that they did this joint venture with Toshiba Tech. It's called Etra. And I got to ask a couple of questions here. So it did 1.8 billion in revenue. And it had a 5% operating profit, 91.7 million. But I'm thinking a manufacturer making goods and then selling those goods to resellers. So Etra would be the manufacturer for the Ricoh machines, and those Ricoh machines are going to go to Ricoh, and those Toshiba machines are going to go to Toshiba. So why is the operating profit so damn low? And then I'm thinking, well, maybe what they're doing is, hey, let's not sell them to Ricoh for $2 so that Ricoh can get some profit on the other side. I hope that's not what they're doing, because you would think a manufacturing company that manufactures MFPs would want to make more operating profit. Just my thinking. Let's look at the Ricoh Graphics Communication. It did 918.9 million for the first half of FY 2024. Commercial printing did 780.6 million. Industrial printing did 137.6 million. And they had a 70.8 million operating profit, or 7.7%. Well, on the surface, that looks pretty damn good. I will tell Ricoh this, same thing I'm telling Koenig. I don't know why the hell you guys are even in this industrial print. $137.6 million for 6 months is nothing. And quite honestly, it would be nice to know where the operating profit in this whole graphics communication is actually coming from. Is it coming from the commercial printing? Is it coming from the industrial printing? Where's it coming from? But you know, one thing that Ricoh and our friends over at Konica talked about, remember the Drupa show? And we're going to sell all these machines. We're at Drupa. We got thousands of orders. Remember that? I want to do a little research. And I did an episode on this because I researched it once before. But I wanted to look at the graphics communications business and see how much it grew from the first quarter of this year to the second quarter. Because you know what they do is they'll say, hey, we're doing this, and this is our growth or our decline from the second quarter or the first half of last year. But I said, no, let's look at this a little different. Let's see if they grew since Drupa. So how much did they grow since that first quarter ended? Well, ladies and gentlemen, as a matter of fact, they didn't grow at all in the commercial graphics printing business over there at Ricoh. Commercial printing was down 5.5%. Industrial printing was down 15%. And these down figures, these down percentages, are against the first quarter of this year. So in other words, they were going to sell all this stuff, but they're not. They didn't even beat the first quarter, and they say in here that they're going to start getting more orders for it in the second half. We'll have to watch this real closely, because I don't think they're selling anything more than they would have sold if they didn't go to Drupal. I think they just had some pent-up demand. They had customers waiting, show up at Drupal and buy them. But at the end of the day, I still question why they're even in industrial print, driving revenue for 6 months at $137.6 million. That's pretty pitiful. Let's look at digital services. You know, the digital service division, that's where they have office services and office printing. Office services is all the IT stuff they're doing, right? That business did $2.8 billion for the first half. Office printing did $2.9 billion for the first half. Pretty split evenly in the revenue. Total division did $6.1 billion. They had an operating profit of $19.7 million, 0.3%. Folks, this is just disgusting. What was it the first quarter? Y'all remember I talked pretty hard about this. IT services, buying up all these things in Europe. You should be getting profitable here. Why aren't you making any money? You're not making any money in the printing. You're not making any money in the services. You're bringing in $6.1 billion in revenue for a half a year at 0.3% operating profit. That's just pitiful. You know, they break out this IT business. They have these office services, geographies. I've been through this in detail on other episodes. But I just want to ask a couple of questions. You know, they say IT services grew on strength of such acquired companies as PFH and IPM and all this stuff. We're buying up all this stuff. We're growing our revenue because we're buying stuff. When does acquiring companies transition to profitability, Ricoh? That's the question I'm asking. When does acquiring companies transition to profitability? They talk over here, enhance on-site business profitability by enhancing operational efficiencies and controlling pricing. What do you mean, enhancing profitability? Because you're not even profitable. You act like you're actually profitable and you want to enhance it more profitably. What you should be saying when you have a 0.3% operating profit, we have to get profitable. Because a 0.3% operating profit is a damn rounding error for the most part, meaning you're not profitable. There they are, folks, all the assets they gobbled up over there in Europe. An impending impairment charge coming soon, as I say. Mindshift didn't help with profits. So let's do it in Europe. And you notice I did the it and I made it IT. Remember Mindshift here in the United States, we're going to be this IT service provider. That's when they were following Konica. Konica bought All Covered. Ricoh says, oh, let's go out and buy Mindshift. We could do what Konica Minolta's doing. Well, you're doing it, not making any money. And then they do an impairment charge against Mindshift. And now what are they doing? Oh, let's do it in Europe. Maybe it'll be different there. It won't be any different. It'll end in the same disaster that it ended here. It's getting harder and harder to take Ricoh serious. It seems as they are teetering on the edge of the cliff. Ricoh has this tagline, imagine change, and folks, I can't imagine them changing. I mean, if you go back, you got to go back a long years, and you can see they just can't do it. They cannot figure out how to be profitable. The industry is going through major disruption and innovation, and without profitability, you're doomed. And I imagine them driving off the cliff. Is how I imagine them. And it would be fantastic if I'm wrong. It would be fantastic. But in order for me to be wrong about Ricoh driving off a cliff, Ricoh has to start driving toward profitability and doing it now. And they need to do whatever the hell it takes to do it now. Because everybody watching me knows this. Status quo is the killer of all that'll be invented. Don't get stuck in status quo, and I'll see y'all tomorrow.